No. No, I'm not going on until I get my Danish. We've talked about this. Fine, get someone else in here to intro the show. All right, fine. But this is the last time. Hi. Welcome back to Kevin Pollak's Chat Show. I am, of course, not Chat Show. Let me clear that up right away. Chat Show himself and the lovely Jamie Foxx are both up in San Francisco participating in the Sketchfest Comedy Festival, a wonderful fest. And if you live in and around the San Francisco area, do yourself a favor and go check out some great shows. The fest is going like another week and a half, 2 weeks. It's fucking great, and you will like it, and you're welcome in advance. But we miss you, Kevin. He's doing some shows up there, and I think they might be done with all of his shows, so you blew it. You missed him. But you know what? Catch him next year. And anyway, Kevin, thank you for letting me sit in for you and embarrass myself and the show for the next 90 minutes. Moving right along. We have really no old business or new business other than to say Happy New Year, Chat Show fans. We're very glad that you've stuck it out with us through the new year. It's been trying on some of us and less trying on others. But I'm going to try you on for a while and see how you like it. That turned weird. All right, I'm very excited about today's guest, and I wrote him this delightful little intro. So here we go. Our guest today has a professional career spanning the last 42 years, but I swear it doesn't look a day over 30. Known to foolish people as the ultimate that guy, but beloved by TV and film buffs alike for his portrayal of such goobers as Glenn, the would-be wife-swapping brother-in-law from Raising Arizona, and Lester Lehman, Kirstie Alley's hapless husband in Drop Dead Gorgeous. His IMDb page lists him as acting on a staggering 123 different TV series, some of which even aired. Sure, to you, he might always just be Officer Crespi from Chud, but to me, he'll always be my fictional philandering father who's woefully behind on my allowance. Please welcome Sam McMurray.
Sam, that's going on my webpage.
Oh, that's fantastic. I took such joy in writing that one.
Thank you.
Thank you on the show for so long, mostly because it's like looking into a mirror for me, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
That was some genius casting.
That was some
on
fun.
On the part of Allison Jones and Judd and Paul.
Yeah, you know that it was unfortunate in a way because I think Judd had an entire story beat out where Amy and I split.
Yeah.
And then it was going to be sort of Bachelor Dad with you and maybe Krumholtz from time to time.
Yeah, because it was. I know that that storyline, the Freaks Geeks storyline with the parents, the father cheating and the parents getting divorced was sort of a hybrid storyline between one of our writers, Jeff Judah.
Yes.
It was his father who he rode around, I think, with Chicago on his bike with the garage door clicker. Like that's a real story.
Okay.
He didn't find the garage door like Neil did. But then Judd's part of that story was his parents went through this really messy divorce when he was like 14, 15, and that's why he started doing stand-up as as sort of a release. And surely Neil couldn't be anywhere as cool as having a stand-up career.
Yeah.
So they went the nerdier route with the ventriloquism.
Right, and you loved that so well, working with
boy.
The Figure, as we call it.
Yeah, that was a rough day. I don't know if you remember that day.
I do remember. I remember it well.
Oh boy, I was freaking out that day because it was the first time I had to remember both sets of lines as the actor.
Yeah.
Which I'd never done before, and it was not easy. And I was really fucking around, or not fucking around, but like fucking up for like the first 20 minutes, and I was super apologetic. I was like, I need some time.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're gonna lose the day. So they turned around, and I went and learned all the lines and came back. And it still turned out fine.
Turned out fabulous.
We'll see.
We'll see.
I was actually happy we didn't have to loop a lot of those ventriloquism lines.
Okay.
Which I think they did on purpose because it would have sounded too good.
Well, right. I thought that,
They wanted it to be shitty. And it was.
It was appropriately shitty.
Yeah. No, enough about me. So how did you come to be involved in Freaks and Geeks?
I got a phone call out of the blue. I mean, this has happened a few times, which just shows you that no one has any taste.
That's nice.
I didn't know Judd from Hole in the Wall. And just got a phone call, maybe through Allison, just saying, he wants you for this. I mean, this happened with Shonda Rhimes for Scandal.
Yeah.
And it was like, sure, happy to oblige, but no, I didn't know him from Adam, and I was happy to land on the show, and, just...
That's
at the time, actually, I had Oh, well, remember we were doing the thing, it was for NBC. And I also was doing a pilot for NBC.
Oh.
And I can't remember who the head of NBC at the time was, but it wasn't Greenberg, but he'd been, and Garth Ancier.
Garth Ancier and Scott Sasso were the
Right, as if this matters. But they had been sort of junior execs in the early days of Fox when I was doing the Tracey Ullman Show, and I knew them from there, and I had done this pilot with John Pasquin directing, who's been, my benefactor more than once. With Jim Brewer, in which I played his father, but it was for NBC, and I saw Garth at the thing, and I said, so what's going on with Freaks and Geeks? Because by then the baseball World Series, I think, had basically bounced us.
Yeah, we were knocked off.
And he said, if you get an 8, I'm going to pick up the rest of the order, and I think we did an 8.
Exactly. An 8.
And so they said, well, whatever it was, 3 more episodes. And,
yeah, it wasn't quite what we wanted.
Let the door hit your fanny on the way out. Oh, well. But, I think I've been in as many shows that deserved a second chance as those that didn't and got picked up. But not just that. I mean, I did a show called Likely Suspects in '94, which I loved. But, it was one of another, whatever.
Yeah. It's crazy the ones that make it to air versus the pilots where you can just think about what might have been. And it's crazy when I see the ones that do make it to air, and I think, what were the pilots that they passed on to get this thing on the air?
Absolutely.
And those are only shows I've been in. I want to be clear about that when I make that sweeping judgment call. So you came on and you joined us it was 3 episodes on Freaks and Geeks.
Correct. Well, what was the total? We only did 9, right?
No, there was a total of 18.
Were there 18?
Yeah. I think yours, the first one you did was the 8th episode. I think it was called The Diary, which is where they introduced your character the first time.
The garage door opener,
and then the garage door was the second one.
And then there was the one where the shit hits the fan,
was the ventriloquism one.
Right.
And I'm really proud of myself. I did not have to look any of that up. I knew it offhand.
Did you?
Yes. I'm evidently the go-to Freaks and Geeks historian. And it's not like I'm some super fan of the show.
You still have your high school yearbook version when they gave us the DVD?
But of course.
I don't.
That's a shame. Would you sell it?
Yeah.
You can pawn that on eBay for like $200.
Times are tight.
Hey, man, I'm not casting any judgments here.
Got to do what you got to do.
But
kids in college.
I remember how excited I was when I found out when we were shooting The Diary or going into that, when they told me that they gotten you to play my dad.
Well, but see, it was basically because you're George Jessel in another life, that's all. Basically, he worked the Empire with Eddie Cantor, He was a son of a bitch, right?
Yes.
That's, that's why we like each other, because we're essentially very old souls.
Indeed, we are.
And, unemployed.
2 old Jewish unemployed actors, what could be better? And so I was very excited. I remember the first day you got there, I chewed your ear off about Tracey Ullman and Raising Arizona, which we're going to do again today.
Sure.
You're not escaping that. And then when you worked on the 2nd episode, The Garage Door, that's when I learned a very interesting thing about you, because that episode was directed by a guy named Brian Gordon.
Right.
And then you and Brian were old friends, and I remember seeing you guys hugging and the handshake and everything, and I walked over and said, oh, you guys know each other. And then you told me the history of you and Brian.
We did the Oscar-nominated, or I guess Oscar-winning short. Yes, Ray's Male Heterosexual Dance Hall.
And I want you to know, I had a hard time finding it. I had to go to your house, and you showed it to me on an old VHS tape. That's how, because I was dying to see it. And I'm happy to report those days are over.
Yeah.
And anyone who would like to see the Academy Award winning short film, Ray's All-Male Heterosexual Dance Hall, just look it up on YouTube. It is there in its entirety for free. I verified this last night. Please go check it out.
I haven't seen it since whenever, but I remember we all went in and we had dance lessons because, most of us just lead when we dance, but we all had to learn both positions and so forth. And and he got a guy, somebody like Freddie Fields, he got a very famous cinematographer to come out of retirement and shoot it. So it looked great. And it was all like, a bunch of terrific actors and so forth. And we got paid, garnished. Oh, sure. And then Brian wins the Oscar, and he gets up there and thanks everybody but the cast. Thanks so much. It feels real good.
Yeah. You're the spouse.
But at least I got to give him shit about that for the rest of our time together. So,
sure.
Yeah.
I feel like you may have even brought it up on the set of Freaks
I'm
Geeks.
sure I did. Probably more than once.
Let's talk about that short, just because I rewatched it last night.
Did you really?
In prep for this.
Wow.
It is so interesting to watch, especially given the state of things today.
Yes.
And how far we've come, and how what would have been, taboo for, what was it, 1980?
86, 87.
Yeah, something like that. What would have been more taboo of like, ooh, all these men dancing together. It's today, it's like, and
Yes, really.
But you know, so certainly of its day, it was a very out there kind of thing. How'd you guys feel about, what was the sense going into making it?
Oh, I don't think anybody thought we were, revolutionizing anything. No, it was just kind of, we thought it was funny, but it was, it's just the metaphor that changed essentially. It's still all about climbing the corporate ladders, I recollect. And
absolutely.
The idea is to dance with Lyman Ward, as I recall. He was the big boss.
Yes.
And there's David Rashi, I think Boyd Gaines, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
But no, it was mostly, I think we were more concerned about looking bad dancing. That was the big concern.
Everybody looked fantastic.
Yeah, really well.
Bunch of Gene Kelly's in there,
God,
if I say so myself. So once again, I will implore you people at home, not right now, because we're having a great conversation here, but when this is over, YouTube, Ray's all-male heterosexual dance hall, not all-male,
no,
excuse
it's
me,
just
I'm
male.
adding all.
Yes.
Ray's male heterosexual dance hall. It is worth the 11 minutes or whatever it is.
Yeah, and really launched Brian, too. I mean,
It really did, yeah. He's had quite the career.
Yeah.
And we were lucky to have him on Freaks and Geeks.
I remember I was doing that scene where I had John's mouth pried open in the dentist chair, and he's got all this contraption. And Brian said, do something. I said, no, that sucks. Which I don't think I've ever actually done, particularly on camera.
Right.
If we were rolling, I went, no, that's Drick, Brian. Come on, man.
You can only do that with someone, with a director you
someone
have
you
rapport
like,
with.
yes, I suppose,
I've seen actors make that mistake, when they're a guest star on a show or something, and they've never met the director. And
that's a very interesting thing that we don't really talk about, because I did a series up in Seattle. 20 years ago almost, was when it was called Medicine Ball. It was the same time as ER and Chicago Mope. So it kind of tanked because of it, because Fox said, well, we don't want to make it look like a Me Too product, so we're going to push the debut of it to November. I said, when it will definitely look like a Me Too product. Not that anybody asked me. It was a rather nice show, but Seattle, of course, is this huge theater community. So they're saying, well, let's cast the guest shots out of locally. And so a number of them, and they could not do it. I mean, I'm sure they did, they were on stage doing Shakespeare and kicking ass and giving out haircuts. But, I mean, you couldn't, there was one guy who was playing my friend and colleague, and you couldn't move him with a bulldozer. It was just like so rigid. And I thought, it really does take a certain kind of, relaxation and fluidity to walk into a pre-existing set and say, oh, okay, where am I? I'm over here, fine, and protect yourself. So. It is not the easiest thing in the world.
No, it isn't. And I too myself have seen guys who are great on stage. In the TV world, they're missing a step because it's so different.
That's an interesting. I guess it's kind of a subcategory, used to be, but that whole sort of, the James Garners, the David Jansons, all those guys who were so terrific on television and didn't really make the leap to features, or at least in somebody's perception, they didn't.
Right.
But they were just totally winsome as television actors.
Well, I mean, as I'm sure you know, back 30 years ago, if you were a TV star, you were a TV star.
Right.
Maybe you'd get a chance at a movie. I don't think it was until maybe the late 70s, early 80s.
Early 80s. Bruce Willis, I was thinking,
Bruce Willis and Ted Danson.
And Teddy,
but back in the 60s, 70s, if you were a big TV star, that's all you were.
Teller
was a big TV
Savalas
star.
didn't do features, and he was as big as anybody on television.
Yeah.
That was one of my first jobs. I did a Kojak when he bullied Universal, I think, it was, into moving to New York for a season, because it was always shot out here. Funny, I just saw Kevin Dobson the other day. And I got one of my first nice gigs was to play Maria Schell's nephew on an episode of Kojak, shot in Washington Square Park. And I was a very flamboyant choreographer.
Those moccasins never touched the floor.
Nope, no, but it was great fun. And they said, there's your trailer. And I go, the big trailer. And I open the door, and there's Herb Edelman sitting there. And I go, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. She said, no, come on in. I'd never done that or seen or heard about that since, but basically we shared a trailer. We got on like gangbusters. He's the nicest man in the world, But that was a while ago.
I'm going to have to attach a glossary of older actors to this episode.
Yeah.
When the young people listen to it.
It's like my parents,
Well, now let's talk about your parents. Let's jump around. Let's go back to the beginning.
Who's beginning now? Mine?
How about the mutual? Your beginning based on their beginnings.
All right. Well, let's see. So my mother actually was a West Coast Jew. That meant, they kept kosher during the high holidays so the neighbors wouldn't smell bacon burning.
Perfect.
So she grew up in Seattle and then in San Francisco. My mother actually was at the Rose Bowl when Roy Regals ran the wrong way in 1929. Okay? She was quite precocious. She graduated from Berkeley when she was 19 and knocked around and came to New York in the 30s. And my father grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and was a dancer. And by the time he got out of high school, he actually was very tall. He was 6'3". In those days, it was gigantic. And he had a scholarship offer to go to Franklin and Marshall to play basketball and run track, but he wanted to go to New York. After interning, I'd just like to say this, and there may be someone on the planet who still remembers, there was a group called, you remember like Fred Waring and the Pennsylvanians, with like this sort of big swing, sweet, band. And like, they weren't really jazz, but it was more like dancing for white people kind of stuff.
Sure.
And my father was the lead dancer for Fern Keogh and his all-girl marimba band.
Oh boy.
Okay, which is actually quite well known in the Pennsylvania area, and danced and apparently did some other things with Fern's wife, Reg.
Oh.
At any rate, that led him to go to New York and try his hand there, where he couldn't get arrested because he was very skinny and tall like Tommy Tune, only wasn't fashionable, right? So, I mean, in those days, they would actually, for chorus boys, they'd line you up by height and they'd chop off both ends and audition the middle. Because chorus boys had to be sort of,
same, yeah.
Right. And he was 6'3", so it was like, good night. Not until the war happened, and then he was working. So anyway, he got married. My mother had to start her husband. Then she had a second husband, and this would interest you, actually. She was married to a guy named Billy Friedberg. Now, if you really know your TV, Billy Friedberg was Nat Hiken's partner, and they created You'll Never Get Rich, better known as The Bilko Show, right?
Oh.
With Phil Silvers.
Yeah.
Anyway, after the war, the big one, WW2, they met in New York, late 40s, early 50s, and left their, otherwise, they left their old spouses for the new, and that was me in the early 50s and so forth. I just, as a sort of parenthesis, years later when I'm first starting out, like 75 or something like that, I got flown out to meet with Norman Lear for, what was the show with Rue McClanahan? And Apple Pie, or, no, that wasn't it, the guy just blanked. And Jack Guilford was in it, and Dabney Coleman, Anyway, somebody will call us in.
Yeah.
So I go in, and Norman, who's the loveliest man in the world, says, "You're terrific, but you really fall between two stools. You're too young for this, too old for the other, but hang around." So I hung around for the week, and Michael McGuire was in it, who was in the original championship season and so forth. And we go to do a table reading one day, and they still haven't cast my part. And I know I'm not doing it, but I'm happy to help. And Phil Silvers comes in. Now, Phil Silvers had asked Norman Lear to come, and Norman said, well, the part's cast, it's Jack Guilford. And Phil said, I don't care, I just want to come and see. And I thought, okay, because Norman couldn't say no. So he comes and sits down next to me, and oh boy, hey, wait a minute, I've got the best story. I say, my mom, Jane Hoffman, was married to Billy Friedberg, who created your show along with Nat Hiken, and he bursts into tears. I'm like sitting there. Because Billy Friedberg had died of a heart attack in his apartment, and they called Phil Silvers, and he went over with the cops, and they broke the door down.
Oh.
And Norman Lear's looking at me like, what the fuck did you say?
But how could you have known?
Who
There was no internet. That wasn't out there.
Exactly.
You had to know.
So anyway, my parents hung together for a while, and they split when I was like 10 or 11. My dad came out here when I was like 15. He remarried another actress.
But you were still in New York.
I was still in New York.
Yeah.
Although, oddly enough, for 2 years, when I was 13 to 15, I lived in Palo Alto because Stanford University had a rep company. And for my mother, it was a great opportunity to do a number of things like, the Cherry Orchard and the Chairs, and work with people like Harold Gould, who was, a dear friend and so forth, and some others like Paul Richard. And Jerry Hiken, who was Nat's brother, actually, was a wonderful actor. Anyway, but when I was 15, thank God, I got to go back to New York City, where I felt, like a human being. Because I didn't understand the whole West Coast culture, the surfer idea and all that shit.
Well, Palo Alto.
Yeah, and it was a small town. This is a long time before,
Sure.
It blew up, and it was maybe 50,000 and so on. But that's actually sort of where I drifted into theater, because I was, at loose ends, and my mother essentially got me a job as a stagehand at the Rep. And then I was the boy in Good Woman of Szechuan. That was my, my theater debut.
When you were 15.
When I was 15. But, mostly I was about basketball and pimples.
Well, sure.
But then I went back to New York, and I finished up high school there, which I loved, and so that's still home. In fact, I still keep talking bullshit about moving back there, but
come on.
Not this week because it's really cold. It's nasty.
No, it's like 60 degrees today.
Is it today?
I don't know what's going on.
Both my girls live there now, so they think it's weird. Yeah.
It is weird. I was just there. I was there for maybe the warmest Christmas they've ever had, and then one of the coldest days they've had in like the first week of January.
Right.
So I don't care for it. I don't care for it one bit, Sam.
Okay. Okay, bud.
Now, did you go to school in New York as well?
I went to school in New York. I was in the first co-ed graduating class of the Dalton School.
Hello.
Yeah, it had been all girls after 8th grade.
Went the other way.
Went the other way. And they said, let's bring in boys. And it was, as I said, I'd just come back from Northern California, and I had missed, in those days, everybody had to test constantly in order to get into the better high schools, like Bronx Science or Tech, or, if you went to music and art or something like that. And I wasn't particularly endowed with any of those gifts, and it was more of a humanities guy. So I was basically looking at going to Charles Evans Hughes, which was easily the worst high school in all of New York. And it actually serviced the entire west side. So from Greenwich Village to Harlem, that was their waterfront.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Big
now
school?
the high school for the humanities, huge. But it was also, it was just like everybody was on Skag. They were all. A friend of mine who went there, and the first day he's sitting there in his homeroom and he smells something burning. It was his hair, so it was like a little rough. So my mother talked to Marjorie Plachette. I have to talk like that because Marjorie was married to Norman Plachette, who was the father of the actor John Plachette.
Sure.
And the uncle of Suzanne Plachette, and who had delivered me. And Marjorie was on the board, and she hip-pocketed me and got me into Dalton with a little financial help.
Sure.
So that's where I went for 2 years, and I had a ball, because this is 67 to 69. I had skipped 8th grade, because I was talking to Rob Perlman about this the other day. He and I think, are the only two people alive who were still in the SPs back in the day in New York. When you went to junior high, it was 7 to 9. And they had a program where if you had tested well, you could actually do 3 years in 2. So I actually graduated high school a year early, just so you don't think I'm 64. I'm only 63.
I made no assumptions.
I understand.
Yeah.
But so I went there, then I didn't know where to go to college.
Yeah.
I had a family friend wanted me to go to Brown, and I remember going up to Providence, which has rebounded considerably since those days. But then it was like, basically the capital of slot machines, not slot machines, like vending machines. That was, and the New England mob was run out of Providence. They were very proud of that, Ray Patriarch and so forth. But I go to Brown and I see all these guys wearing yarmulkes. I say, is this a rather large Jewish segment here? And he goes, no, those are freshman beanies. I went, you mean they have to wear those? He went, yeah. I said, I'm out, man.
No, done.
I'm going back to the city.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, I don't know, default wear, I don't know. So I wound up going to Washington University in St. Louis, which was, has since become very highfalutin. It was a terrific school, unfortunately, and I don't mean any ill will towards anybody in the great state of Missouri, but it's in St. Louis.
No, you're correct to take a shit
I
in St.
know,
Louis.
I know.
I want you to know that. As a Cubs fan, I try to do it on a daily basis.
You're not from Chicago, are you?
I was born there, but I have a deep allegiance to my beloved North Side Cubbies.
Understand. Yeah. No, my friend Marty Cohn, my college roommate, used to live on North Racine. You could open the window and hear the ball game. So yeah. Now we would escape to Chicago every weekend. We would like hitchhike. In those days, just and we'd go. But it was actually a terrific school, and I was an English major there, and then wound up falling out of love with my first girlfriend. And when I came to, I was doing 3 plays. So I guess I was meant to,
Now wait, you skipped a step. You skipped a step in there because while you were at school, you started leaning toward journalism.
That was the very vague idea. As I said, I was an English major throughout. We had great teachers like Stanley Elkin, and Iris Murdoch was there for a year, and William Gass, who was still there, I believe. I know he's still extant.
Yeah.
Wonderful writers and so forth. And it's a terrific school. And I try to push this gently with my kids, although my eldest wanted to be an actress since she was, 6. But my other daughter was a liberal arts major, and I think that that's important because even when in the ancient days when I was going to college, there were guys who were going, well, I'm pre-med. I went, you're 17 years old. You haven't finished jerking off yet. What are you talking about, Yeah, but I've gotten either that or I'm going to go to architecture. I'm like, why don't you take 4 years and learn how to think?
Yeah.
So, which I think is the advantage of a liberal arts
absolutely.
education. So, and then you can join the grind and and kill yourself when you're 45 because you never really wanted to be a dentist in the first place.
Damn right. My father, who the reason, as I know you well know, because you played a dentist on
I
Freaks
did,
Geeks
I
as my
did.
dad, is because when we were shooting the second episode,
Yeah.
my real parents came to visit the set. My real father was there for the first time, and when I introduced him to Judd and Paul, and they said, "Oh, what do you do?" And he said, "Oh, I'm a dentist." And they went, "Of course you are." Of
course
well,
you
that's
are.
that. And then Vic Schreiber became a dentist. But so now you and I joke about this at lunch, and we talked about it before. You call it the family sickness.
Yes.
The family disease?
Yes.
About acting. So is that what made you lean towards that way, being an English major? And
Do you know, I guess so. As I really hadn't, when I was in high school, I had all the usual, preoccupations. Basically, I played basketball and baseball and even football, although I was skinny as a post, But I really didn't intend to. As I said, I sort of went into this fugue state when I broke up with my first girlfriend. It was, I was going to marry, and when I came out of it, I was like doing 3 plays. It was obviously, a very comfortable place. And a couple of times I posted things on Facebook from when I was a little kid, and my parents would work at Summer Stock in Fishkill, New York, and so forth. And those things are seminal to me. I mean, I vaguely remember seeing my father kicking the television set every night on this bad play called Anniversary Waltz, and I thought that was thrilling, So yeah, it always felt like home to me.
That's great.
But it wasn't I quite honestly, I'd like to say there was more of a kind of dedicated thought to this is what I want to do rather than just drifting.
Sure.
But, and I teach from time to time, and I say this to the kids, and I was thinking about this as I came in. I say, I hope that when you're acting and you're 30 or you're 40, that it's not for the same reasons you were acting when you were 20. Because if that doesn't shift, then there's probably something wrong with your perspective. Do you know what I mean? When you're 20, it's like, look at me, but when you're 30 and when you get a bit older, there should be hopefully a more, humanitarian approach to things. I mean,
sure.
One of the things when I did the old Tracey Ullman Show, when I started, that was the thing that got me on the show, was part of this gay couple that raised this 13-year-old girl, Francesca, played by Tracey, brilliantly, right? And I was the more flamboyant of the parents. And Danny Castellaneta played her biological father, and I was her William, right? But when we wrapped the show, this guy comes up to me with his teenage daughter and says, "I just want to thank you, because I'm gay, and this has been, something that addressed the issues that we've been having forever." And, that was quite moving to me,
Wow.
Because it felt like, I really had a, rather positive effect.
Absolutely.
So,
So wait, let's talk about the Tracey Ullman Show, since that
Sure.
was such an important part of your career.
yeah, I guess. I came out west in '86. I remember I was doing, so I'd established myself in New York to some degree. I was working a lot, which meant I was in Connecticut. Seriously, I worked at the O'Neill for 9 seasons. I worked at the Hartman. Oh God, I worked at the Hartford. I worked at Yale, and I worked at Long Wharf, and I'm probably missing a couple.
Yeah.
So at one point I was doing, this rather threadbare version of Philadelphia Story at the Hartman, which is in Stamford, Connecticut, which is like 45 minutes out of the city. And my wife had a car which I was using. This was late winter and so forth. And then I was doing this brilliant play by a friend of mine named James Yoshimura, who's somebody you should be aware of, who Jamie wrote and ran Homicide for a long time. Chicago playwright. I mean, he's like this tall, and he talks like, Dennis Farina back in the yard, like, what the fuck, right? I'm making my $1.280 here, and everybody else go fuck yourself, But that's because his parents moved from Manzanar during the war. Because they had a fruit stand in Santa Monica, and they got imprisoned, and they said, if you want to leave, you have to convert to Christianity, and you have to move to a secure part of the country. So they went to Chicago. Anyway, he's a great playwright, and he wrote this play called Union Boys.
Yeah.
He also wrote a play called Ohio Tip-Off, which was when I first met him, about a minor league basketball team. But this play, Union Boys, I had done at the O'Neill, and we were doing it up at Yale, Rep. Delroy Lindo, John DeVries, Giancarlo Esposito, Marcus Giamatti, and Bart was running, Yale at the time.
Wow, and give me a year on this?
So what?
Give me a year.
Early 86, late 85. So I was going to New Haven rehearsing and coming back and doing Philadelphia Story, then repeating it, and so so for 2 weeks I was making $800 a week. It was like,
hello.
Yes, good, twice 400. And I got the first show open, which was the Union Boys, which was playing in Rep. And I went home, and I lay down on the couch, and my wife had gone up to see her relatives in Rhode Island. And I woke up 2 days later, I had German measles.
Oh.
So anyway, got through that. And then I got this movie, Raising Arizona, which was sort of seminal, I guess.
Oh, we'll come back to that.
So we go out to Scottsdale or whatever, and we all made $1.280 on that thing, to use a Chicago term. We were just like, But it was a great shoot. The whole thing was wonderful. And then I came out on a drop and pickup and wound up getting a pilot with the aforementioned John Paskman called Dads. Not the one with Paul Reiser. This is another short-lived one with a guy named Carl Weintraub and I.
Yeah.
So my wife and I said, maybe it's time. Maybe we should make the move. So we came out in the fall of that year, of '86. And after a while, I actually read for the original incarnation of Tracey Ullman Show. This is, I knew, really fascinating. And didn't get it. And then they called me back again. They said they have a new casting director, Bonnie Pietola, and she wants to see you again. I said, okay. So I go in and I wound up getting the part of William. And I did one episode. And then we were on a break, and then they came back to me and said, we want to make you a regular. So
that's a nice phone call.
Yeah, it was a lovely phone call. But that's, in a way, that doesn't happen anymore.
No, it does not.
I mean, and
that's the rarity.
Well, it's not just that. It's, it's like, remember we sort of shaped the world around seasons in LA. It was pilot season, and then there was the rest of the year, And that really doesn't exist anymore, although the networks sort of cling to that fiction.
Yeah.
I was having lunch with Sandy Logan the other day, who was a casting director. She said, aren't you excited for pilot season? Yeah, it's a toss-up between that and blowing my brains out. Really. But they get excited because that's when they get to do what they do. Yeah. And we get to, we get on the tour bus with the other actors, our types, and schlep all over the,
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Just to gripe between you, and this is something you and I would only talk about at lunch and not on a podcast, but when you do it Fox now, how they make everyone go to the other parking structure.
Yes.
And now you have to take the whole walk of shame down Avenue of the Stars. What the fuck? That is some bullshit.
That's what ever does. I mean, and Warner's is one also, you go in the back door.
Yeah.
And I had done a bunch of Friends,
Oh, that's right.
Where they slap Matt Perry on the ass and so forth. And one day I go in and the security guard goes, wait, man, no, wait a minute, no, I know you. Friends, right? I go, yeah, right. He said, yeah, no, you're on the sexual harassment tape that they showed to the employees. I said, thank you, man, made it,
I believe you still are, by the way. I did an NBC series back in 2012, and they showed a video that had my pal Ben Schwartz as Jean Ralphio on Parks and Rec, and I think they also had you as Doug.
As Doug.
The ass-slapping boss on Friends.
That was one of those things that started out great, and then I kept doing every succeeding episode a little less funny. But, having to get paid, and the residual checks still come in, so thank you very much.
Absolutely.
No, it's nice. It was like I was in Kennedy less than a year ago, and this guy walks up to me and goes, hey, man, you still acting? Felt good.
My favorite. That question is my favorite.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
Yep. So they say, hey, you want to be a regular on Ullman Show?
Right.
And you say, of course.
Sure. And they go, here's what we're paying. I went, really? Oh, well,
Yep.
Well, that was the joke, because they had 7 writers, because Brooks brought everybody over from Taxi and so forth. And they all had $1 million deals. Even Tracy wasn't making much, so we all just got, but then, then you fall into the pot of gold out of Danny Castellaneta.
Sure.
And that's a different story.
That is a different story. And that was just a matter of, these guys will do this animated short, and these guys will do this one.
No, I've told you this. It was just done interstitially, and there was another series which somebody, I'm sure, remembers the name of. I do not. Yeah. But they assigned me to that one. It was kind of a Pfeiffer-esque kind of cartoon, and kind of dry and kind of boring. And and then Danny wound up doing this thing called The Simpsons.
Right.
And we would do it, like we would be on stage 19 shooting, and they go, can we get you up in the booth for 5 minutes? And we just do a wild up there and stuff like that. But, I'm actually going to do something with Dan now. I might as well plug it. He's written this thing. God bless him, he's never been one to rest on his money, although he's got enough. But he's doing this play about Oscar Levant, called For Piano and Harpo, and we're gonna workshop it, and I think we're gonna do it at Gary Marshall's Theater, the Falcon in Burbank, Sam. Yeah, we're doing good over there. Yeah,
boys.
Oh, I love Gary.
Make sure you stop at Art's Deli on the way home.
Gary and I, we did a couple of things together. I did Dear God with him, but I also did this TV series of League of Their Own.
Okay.
And it opened, only it didn't. Dear God, that was. And I ran into him on Riverside Drive near Big Boy, whatever. And I said, Sam, he said, we're killing on airplanes. I'd already been, relegated to the Coach movie on American,
Right.
But my favorite line of all, and I really mean, no disrespect, it's just such a funny line, was that, when Mork and Mindy blew up and Robin went through the roof and so forth, Pam Dorber, who was lovely, got a little left in the lurch, okay? And she went to Gary and she complained about the lack of publicity aimed her way. And, after all, Gary, the name of the show is Mork and Mindy. And Gary said, sweetheart, the name of the show could be Mork and Furniture.
I love show business.
Show business, it's I just got back from Miami Beach and the morale of the troops couldn't be higher. I knew Jolson, you was a son of a bitch.
Yes. That reminds me, speaking of
George
Jolson,
Jessel?
I want our live viewing audience to know I am able to see any tweets that come in directed at me. I'm at Samm Levine, SammLevine. If you are lucky enough to have my cell number, feel free to text me if you have any great questions. First, I'll just give my number out. It's 213-555, go fuck yourself.
Wait.
What? I didn't? Never mind. But
it's 555?
Yeah, isn't that the number? Judd Apatow, the first time I asked him for his number,
he gave you 555 exchange?
He gave me 310-555-1212. And I was
And
17 years old, and I called it that night.
Really?
And then the next day I said, I think there's something wrong with your phone. and then the jig was up.
Were you 17 when you were doing
Yeah,
Freaks Geeks?
I turned 17 the week before we shot the pilot.
Wow.
I was but a baby.
So they had to observe hours and so forth with you?
To a degree. Geeks. I had already graduated high school. And so I could work
were
the
you,
full...
I was going to say, emaciated, but I didn't mean that. Were you
emancipated.
Or emasculated?
I was not emancipated, no.
No?
I still was considered a minor, but I could work the full 10 and a half hours in a day without having to worry about school breaks and stuff.
I see.
So that's the only...
So you didn't go to college?
No, I was working full-time as an actor.
Sure.
But
I worked with Danny Nucci a little while ago, and he had been emancipated when we were doing the aforementioned, that's the second time I've used that word, pilot dads. And he was so excited, he was like 16 or 17, and he thought, of course, that meant he could do anything he wanted.
Well, sure.
I pretty much did. Anyway.
Yeah, so did I.
Did you?
Yeah, I used to stay up till 2, 3 in the morning, man. Shit got crazy.
It's funny. I have kids now, and they're both gorgeous girls, and so I worry all the time about them until I finally fall asleep. But I think back of when I was an idiot in New York in 67, 68, and the stuff we got away with, and it's harrowing.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a cop on the D train who used to rap me with his stick because I'd be passed out at 3 o'clock in the morning as we were heading towards West 4th Street, and I'd stagger off, go home, and my mother would go, "Oh, you're so responsible."
Yeah, it was a different time. My folks both lived in the city for decades when they were growing up, 60s, 70s. They were already married in the 70s. And the stories my father's told me about what he and his brother used to get away with in Manhattan in the 60s is murder.
Yeah.
Compared to what today it's, if you see something, say something, and somebody sleeping on a subway train is cause for alarm.
Well, I go back quite frequently. As I said, both my girls live there now too. Plus, I'm going to have a sort of a presence there come April, I hope.
Oh.
But go back to the Fran Lieberman thing about the best thing about the good old days is that you were younger. That's really what it is. And so you go back and you go, well, the pizza joint's not there anymore. Well, of course not.
Yeah.
You expected it to be like just hung and suspended animation for your return, but
yes,
that's all right.
That is what I expect.
Yes, that's what I would like.
Everything about the town I grew up in, it bums me out every time I go down some old street and it looks totally different.
I actually wrote a thing which got a surprising amount of praise from friends whose opinions I admire, like Saul Rubinek and some others, and my friend Jimmy Shimura, who's a bona fide writer. And it was a period piece during the blackout in '77. And just while I was writing, and I was in New York, and I decided to take a walking tour going down Bedford Street and so forth, and everything was gone, including Chumley's, which closed its doors and so forth, which is, as you probably know, the origin for the term 86.
Yep.
And Lilac Chocolate had moved on, and it was just like, so you can't shoot it. And that's why I'm always stunned. Like, did you see Carol? Todd Haynes?
No, not yet.
The period stuff is so spot on. You can't find fault with it. You don't see the bike lane that's been painted over, or the anachronistic street lamp or whatever it is. Yeah. I don't know how they do it. I really don't.
It's all VFX, my friend.
I guess.
Yeah.
So like that bear in The Revenant, how did they do that?
That's a very well-trained bear.
I guess
he's up for an Academy
Award.
Award.
He should get it.
He's probably going to win the Golden Globe tonight, that bear.
Oh, it's tonight?
It is tonight.
Oh, my God.
I hope.
Didn't make it? Oh, shit.
I hope.
For Jenny's wedding, I thought, well.
Our invitations got lost in the mail yet again,
That's what happened.
I suppose.
I still haven't gotten the screeners, that's all like. I called up
You haven't gotten
SAG.
the SAG screeners?
No, I got
don't care for
2.
this.
I got Big Short
got
and
3.
Beast of No Nation, which, it's on and HBO anyway.
Mostly the post office just steals mine, so you might want to look into that.
Yes. I think they all go
I
to
wish I were
Carmine
kidding.
Caridi's account, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Do you remember that?
Yes.
A nice man. That was a drag. That was a drag. It's like the Chet Baker line, right?
Uh-huh.
Chet Baker, great junkie trumpet player, right? And he's in Italy in the 50s, and he's strung out and fucked up and the whole thing. But they love him in Italy,
Mm-hmm.
Vito Mussolini, who was Benito's son, was apparently a rather terrible jazz pianist. But he was a friend of Chet Baker, so he says, "Don't worry, Chet." He says, "We do concerts, we raise money for you, everything be great. I open for you, okay?" Sure, okay, man, whatever, dude. Baker was just a junkie, The guy actually died falling out a window, chasing his stash in whatever was Amsterdam. So he goes, so Vito Mussolini opens this concert, and it's horrible. It's just a mess. And he comes backstage, and and Chet's hung for a response. And Vito looks at him and says, "So, Chet, what do you think?" And Chet Baker says, "Sure was a drag about your old man."
Yep. Yeah. What else can you say?
What can you say?
All right. Well, no, it's quite all right. I love our little asides. This is what it's like, by the way.
That's what we do.
Sam and I have lunch, and this is all
It's
our
all
lunches.
discursive.
It's all this.
There's no such thing as a digression.
No. But now I do want to talk about Raising Arizona.
Very well.
Because, I mean, come on, man.
Yeah.
Glenn in Raising Arizona. So the magnificent Coen brothers.
Yes.
And Barry Sonnenfeld.
Barry Sonnenfeld, who was like the third director. He
Yeah.
was the DP on it.
Yeah.
Unlike the Coen brothers, I did work with Barry subsequently a number of times.
Yeah.
Coen brothers, never worked with them again. Never heard
Never
from them.
say never.
Well, that's true. I'd heard first couple of years, Joel says there's really nothing for you in this one. I'm like, I give it up. But Barry did Addams Family Values. He directed that, which I did. That was up in Fresno and so forth. And then I did The Tick with him.
Don Buckman in Addams Family.
That's very good, with Harriet Harris, yes. And I did The Tick, which was a wonderful show with my friend Patrick Warburg, who was apparently making a deal to come back.
I heard the same thing.
He told me this. We played golf about, a month and a half ago, and he said, "I'm signing the papers now. I'm hoping to do it." So he's got a show with my friend Stacy Keach playing his father, this thing called Crowded, with Carrie Preston, who's equally brilliant. Carrie won the Emmy. She's the very redheaded actress, a lawyer on Good Wife, and she was on.
Oh, okay.
She's married to Michael Emerson. Anyway, sorry. It was all digression.
No, I like it. It's fine.
It's okay.
This is what
but yes, so Raising Arizona, I read for it in New York, and very interesting. Actors think that they just sort of approach things without boundaries. And there I'm reading the description of the character Glenn, and it said he was short and blonde. So I'm like, well, they'll never see me for this. But they wanted to see me for that. I wanted to read from one of the brothers, either, Billy Forsythe or Johnny Goodman's part. And they go, no, this part. And I was like, okay. And they kept going, yeah. All right, so it was a blast. Now and they were wonderful. It was actually the most enjoyable shoot I ever been on, because they did all the things that they need to do. The food was good. Yep. They took care of the acts. I mean, we weren't making scratch. The movie was shot for $2 million.
Yeah, that's the only thing you can do. If you're paying your crew and actors peanuts,
feed them well.
You feed them well.
Yeah, but I mean, they did things like they would take a stick bed, because we were out in the desert outside of Scottsdale, and they take a stick bed truck and they line it with trash bags and then put ice in it. So by lunchtime, it had melted into a swimming pool, and the group, it was brilliant. The grips were jumping, going to it. And, my wife flew out, and they didn't even ask. They just went and picked her up at the airport.
Oh, that's great.
Because they asked me, I said, don't go. She doesn't really know I'm here.
Right.
No, I'm teasing.
Told her I was in Vegas.
So that was terrific. And then I came out to LA, as I said, I think. And then I wound up doing this pilot, and I said, well, it's time to make the move westward. And I've regretted it ever since.
So now, Raising Arizona, though, when it came out.
Didn't do much at all.
Nothing.
Yeah,
nobody knew about it when it came out.
I was at Fox at the time, and Joel and Ethan came out, and they did this big thing for it and so forth. And, kind of went.
Yeah.
And in their wisdom, Fox just went, oh, well.
Right.
But then I remember couple of years later or something, I'm driving up north and I stop in Sacramento, and this kid, I remember this, said, we just had a screening of Raising Arizona at the frat house. And I think that's what sort of gave it a second wind, you know? Like a lot of college kids and so forth discovered it. And, you know, I don't know, I guess it made money ultimately. But
it has to have turned, I mean,
$2 million
$2 million bucks.
nothing,
At this point, there's no way it hasn't turned a profit.
Sure.
It's to many people still their favorite Coen Brothers movie.
Certainly mine.
I can imagine that's true.
That was lovely. And I had known Fran McDormand from the O'Neill. We had worked together with Athol Fugard, who was our dramaturg on a play about Trinity, about, you know, making of the bomb and so forth. And she had just gotten out of Yale, I think. And she was living with Holly Hunter on Morton Street. They were roommates in an apartment around the corner from my mother's house. I lived on St. Luke's Place, or my mother did. And apparently the story is they wanted Holly for Blood Simple. And she was doing the Beth Henley play. You know, not Miss Firecracker. I guess it was Crimes of the Heart, or maybe it was Firecracker, I don't remember. Anyway, she said, but you should meet my roommate. And so Frances went in and read. I'm sure I'm telling this wrong, but apparently that's how she and Joel met.
That's all right.
And then she did Blood Simple, and then they were together, and then she insisted upon auditioning for the part of my wife in, you know, Raising Arizona, and Joel went, okay, yeah, you got it. You know?
Yeah. You're going to really have to screw up bad to lose this part.
Interesting, though. Huh?
Yeah.
You know, so.
Now so you guys were shooting out in Scottsdale.
Yeah.
And I read this interesting story about you and Nick Cage were out at a Denny's one time.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
God almighty, you really scouring the infoweb.
We don't fuck around here.
No,
Thanks, J-Mac.
we're out there somewhere, and yeah, like a Denny's or one of those, you know, 85 cakes or whatever. And this girl comes up with this wet cocktail napkin. You're a teenager. Like, she goes, like, are you like Nick Cage? And he's like, yeah. And she goes, no, really, are you? And he goes, yeah, I am. She goes, no, you're not. Or maybe you are. And it goes back and forth for like 5 minutes. And finally she says, okay, I don't know, would you sign my napkin? And she hands him this wet cocktail napkin. And Nick finds a pen and writes, tomorrow you will die. Nick Cage.
That is maybe my favorite
appropriate
autograph.
Response.
Yeah.
Well, no, there's a better one, and it's George Clooney. And I witnessed this. So I'm doing Friends the first time, and he was still on ER, although he was breaking out, you know. And they roped off the commissary at Warner Brothers for the cast for those shows because they were near one another. And I see George, and I hadn't seen him for years, and we had done this pilot together. And big hugs, and you're great, you're great, you're great. And this little woman comes over. So this is like 95, so it's pre-digital camera time. She says, hi, my name is Alice. I'm a doctor myself, and I'm from Lima, Ohio, and I'm here with my gal pals. And there's 3 other little midget women standing over there, all with their Instamatics, you know. And we were wondering, can we take a picture with you? And George says, well, the truth is, I'm having my lunch right now. And he says, no, okay. You know, in a nice way, she just stopped. She wouldn't leave him alone.
Yeah.
So finally he says, yeah, okay. And Ben, who was the first on Friends, was his last name escaped me right now, was good friends with George. And so George says, Ben, would you know, take the picture? And so he stands up, and he's about a head taller than all of these little women doctors from Lima, Ohio, and he's got his arms around him and so forth. And Ben takes pictures dutifully with all the cameras, and then they walk away very happy. And George looks at me and says, you see this? And he's got his lab coat on with, you know, the fake ID for whatever it was. And he goes, that's all they're going to see, because Ben would chop his head off. Or if he was standing camera left, he would just frame him out, you know, like that. So.
Dr. Doug Ross, I think.
Right, that's all you got, you know. Anyway. Maybe too much time spent on that story, but.
No, I love that story.
You can cut it out later. Oh, no, it's live.
No, this is live.
Oh, my God, this is like Edge of Night, man. You know?
It's some serious
that was my first job. I did
on.
Edge of Night. It was still live.
Really?
Yes, and my dad had been the villain on it in the early 60s, and the director, a guy named Nick Nicholson, came out and said, are you Dick McMurray? I said, yeah. He's a guy. And later I went back when they'd gone to tape and kidnapped Frances Fisher, so that was really a lot of fun.
She flew behind me, not behind me, she sat in a seat behind me on a plane last winter.
You were flying the plane?
I was flying the plane. No matter how I phrase that sentence, it's going to sound ridiculous. But she sat behind me on a flight. And I was only flying in first because it was on someone else's dime.
Of course.
On a show, not on me. And she was behind me, and she said one of my favorite things, which is they came down asking anybody, can I get you a cocktail, beverage, soda, whatever it is. And I hope this does not reflect her poorly, because when she said it, I was really proud of her. She just says, what's the strongest thing you have?
Sure.
And that made me laugh really hard in the seat in front of her.
No, she's intrepid, boy.
Yeah.
I saw her not long ago. We had dinner, and she's
good.
great.
She is great.
She looks great too.
Yeah,
She was just on Masters of Sex.
Which
She played the mother. And they had called me about playing the father.
Yeah.
And I read it and I thought, this is a terrible thing to admit. I said, it's the mother's episode. The father is just this kind of, passive aggressive guy, and there's nothing really there. And so I passed on, and then they made me an offer the following week, which
what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? So I did it.
You did it.
Week. It was fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Played a Vegas casino. A lot of cigarettes.
Oh, I know. I watched the show.
Do you
I
really?
thought you were magnificent.
She's quite amazing, isn't she?
Lizzie?
Yeah.
She's wonderful.
Because in the hand, she's very pretty, but on camera, she's Audrey Hepburn. I'm doing the scene with her and Josh Charles, an old friend, and I get up and I leave for the tag of the scene, and there's a video assist right there, and I go there and I look and I go, holy Christ. And the video assist guy goes, Audrey Hepburn? I went, yes.
Yeah. She was on Freaks and Geeks.
She told me that. I didn't remember.
Yeah, well, I don't
remember a lot.
You guys certainly never shared
you.
any screen time.
No.
That's for sure. Yeah, she was 14.
Is that right?
When we were shooting the show.
Yeah, well, she went to Hamilton. She's one of the LA theater kids.
Yeah. She's an old pro, that Lizzie Kaplan. But
she's
yeah,
very funny.
She's wonderful. She's
a
great
nice
on the
set.
show, and
and
Michael Sheen is also fantastic. And you were fantastic on that show, and it's always nice to see you when you pop up in the shows I watch.
Well,
Such as, I don't know, Breaking Bad.
That was fun.
That was fun. Let's talk about that.
Well, I had done a Malcolm in the Middle, but I knew Brian from, all that we were talking earlier about, come pilot season and every actor of a certain age, Rusty Russ, Bryan Cranston, Chris Rich. We should all just get into a van together because we're all going to the same audition,
Just to clarify, Rusty Russ is William Russ, who many of you would know as the father from Boy Meets World,
right.
Or if you're a weirdo like me, the villain from that Brooke Shields, George Burns movie.
That one I didn't know.
You didn't know that.
No.
And you and I were at lunch 10 years ago, and I told you that story, that's the first time I saw William Russ, and then I saw him as the dad on Boy Meets World, and then I was like, wasn't that guy a pimp the last time I saw him? And then I ran into him on the Disney lot, and I'd never met him in my life, but you talked about him like, because you guys know each other 30
forever,
years. Yeah. And he walks past me on the Disney lot, and for some reason, my brain, I hear you, and I just go, Rusty Russ! I don't know the man!
No, I
And I'm
understand
shouting
that.
at him like I've known him 30 years, and he immediately, whoa, what? And I turn, I'm like, it's inappropriate for me to be shouting that at you, but that's Sam McMurray coming through me, and I just wanted to say hello, and he's a sweetheart.
Oh, he's a good man.
But anyway, sorry, more
a friend of mine,
tangents.
a writer named Mark Flanagan, was at the theater 3 decades ago in New Haven or something, and he notices there in the lobby there's Elia Kazan, and just out of his mouth he goes, Gadge! And Kazan looks at him like, who are you? And Mark, never mind, sorry, just happened.
Wow.
But anyway, so the whole idea was that we would all, save money in car fare and just go together. But I did one of those. I did Malcolm, which was fun, and then I auditioned actually for Breaking Bad. It was one of those rare opportunities, one of those times when you go, I think I just nailed that, So they fly me out, and it was a very kind of quick, kind of in and out thing. And I did 2 episodes, but I remember the first one, I'm doing the scene with Anna and Bryant, and I'm, discussing whatever, I'm his oncologist and so forth. And because it's the light in Santa Fe or New Mexico is so flat, they're always constantly having to balance it in an odd way. And we're on the 2nd floor and they're big glass windows. And they bring up this 80K, what they used to call a brute. I mean, and it's about here.
Oh.
And I'm like this, and it's the scene, and they're putting ice cubes down my neck. And I look at the director, Adam Bernstein, I say, help. He says,
yeah.
So it was one of those
I'm a hired gun like
you're
you,
like,
pal.
you're right, you look into the sun before you roll, and then you just try to get through the scene without blinking, like, like you've got some sort of tick. And but otherwise fine.
Otherwise
fine. Happy to do it. And it's amazing, the show's got such legs, and everybody binge watches it and so forth, and
We had Vince Gilligan on this show recently.
He's brilliant.
We did a big live one at Largo, and boy, he's got that that whole show from start to finish is just perfection.
Well, what he does, and we were talking about, my friend Julianne Emery is on, has been on the new one, Better Call Saul.
Yeah.
She's the thief. She and her husband are the embezzlers. And we're talking about Johnny Banks, who I've known for a long time, and what he does so brilliantly, which I confess I do not do, because I'm just not built that way, but John has this kind of approach where he lets the camera find him, And you can only really do that on a show like Vince Gilligan's, where he takes his goddamn time, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And you just have to sort of recalibrate your viewing expectations when you're watching that show, because the camera's going to move here, it's going to move there, and it's going to tilt up and find you. And me, I'd be sort of, the Doberman on the leash. I'd be like constantly bucking, can I go now? Can I act now? You know? And John just sort of sits there like with that great face, and until the spirit moves him,
Right, and the camera finds him, and then everyone in Video Village is going, does he know it's on him? Does he know the camera's on him?
He's great.
Yeah.
But we saw, this was the last time I saw him, I think, when I was doing that. We used to go to, various kind of half-ass celebrity golf tournaments, raising money for, the guy who's holding the tournament generally.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, and the kids.
Yeah, it's always for the kids.
Of course, always for the kids, right?
Yeah.
But, it's an interesting community that one finds oneself in. Well, because there's no, as Fred Allen said, there's no there about LA, right? And yet, so you have to sort of fabricate your own community, and that invariably is, staying friends with actors that you worked with and people you like and so forth. Whereas in New York, that's much more at hand, And certainly, it was something that I really enjoyed growing up as the son of actors, that I had friends who were of every age and every ethnicity and color and so forth, and and stayed friends with them. I was talking to you, I think, about my godfather, who was Joe Papp's right hand for many years, a man named Merle Dubusky, and Merle's 95 years old now, he's still going. And,
oh man!
And we stay in touch and so forth, and that's the greatness of New York in many respects. And out here, you basically have to not only do you have to assemble a network, you have to work at maintaining it, because otherwise you go, well, yeah, I saw him about. I guess it was like 11 years ago, because there's no season out here. So that's why people get dogs.
Yeah.
So when they die, you go, oh shit, that means I'm getting older. Oh, right.
Yeah, didn't you get that dog last week?
That was 14 years ago. He just just went.
Well, I want to involve our audience. So let's see.
Because I'm tired.
Come up with any good questions. Let's see what we got. Did the Sam McMurray like breaking his son's heart on Freaks and Geeks by having an affair? Good question, but not for Sam. That's for the writers of the show.
Okay.
I guess.
Well, I think that I don't think.
Take a stab at it.
I don't think that was ever a calculation for my character on Freaks and Geeks. It was just about getting some strange. It was like, really? I mean, was it like, oh, your son's going to be upset?
Applause from
my son.
The crow's nest.
Which son?
Yeah.
David Krumholtz? He doesn't care.
He didn't care.
He didn't care at all. So
that was the scene where I cry after the thing on the bed.
Right.
That was the first time in my career I learned that you have to be well, sure. I learned that you have to protect the boom operator. I'd never thought about a loud noise close to a boom mic.
I see. Yes.
And so I do this thing where I'm supposed to cry very softly.
Yeah.
Like it turns from a cry to a very soft little laugh. And so I did not realize my eyes are closed, and I don't realize the shot's now super tight,
right.
And the boom mic is
right there,
a foot away from my face, and ha 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 ha, and I just went ha ha ha, and the boom guy. All I remember is I opened my eyes, and it was a guy named Brendan, and he's just standing there going. He's trying to get the shot, and he can't let on that I've just absolutely deafened him.
Right.
And then it was Tom Landau, our sound guy, our sound board operator, who approached me afterward. He goes,
"Give us a heads up.
If you're gonna do a loud thing, the booms guys has to know to get because it hurts." I was like, "I'm sorry, I'll never do it again." And that's one of those horrible little
most
acting
necessary
lessons.
evil on the set. But years ago, I did a series in New York, co-produced by Sonny Grasso, right? French Connection, and still going. And Ron Silver, rest in peace, was the lead. And we had the boom operator, was a guy named Sam Dalton. Was it James Dalton? They called him Fat Sam. It may have been Jimmy Dalton. Anyway, and his nephew was the mixer. And this guy was a ballerina. He was brilliant. And he had done Waterfront with Kazan.
Wow.
And they got into it because Kazan gave him shit, and Fat Jimmy says, "Fuck you, I'll come right over there, I'll knock the hell out of you, you rat bastard,"
Yeah.
He said, "But you're all right, you're top shelf."
Yeah.
Top shelf. And it was shot by a guy named Saul Negrin, who I guess is gone now, and his son Mike was the operator. And he was a little bit of a, fidgeter, Yeah, just a spoonful less here, Jimmy. Just fucking shoot it. There was never a boom shadow. He was brilliant. You know, never a boom. Just fucking shoot it.
Nice.
Anyway.
Oh, that's. I do have another one.
Oh.
Admittedly, it was going to be. We were going to land here eventually.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that one.
All
Because I feel terrible that we have gone this far now in this conversation without talking about Kevin Pollak. Which is just not fair. His name is in the title of the fucking show.
True.
The hell's wrong with me?
Kevin Pollak and I were in LA Story together.
Yes.
And we spent a fabulous 3 days down at the old Ambassador Hotel. Tommy Hinckley, Iman was my date.
Hello.
Right. I saw David Bowie actually not terribly long ago, and I almost said, but I didn't. Say hello
for the
me.
best. Probably for the best.
And we just laughed our asses off for 3 days. And Kevin and Larry Miller was on it, and Victoria Tennant, who was with Steve at the time, and so forth. And Mick Jackson did a brilliant job on that. But Kevin showed me around the Ambassador and said, "This is the spot." I went, "The spot?" He said, "This is where RFK bought it."
Oh.
But he knew, so thanks for that. I haven't seen Kevin. A few years ago, I had done this web series with this brilliant friend of mine named Julian Emery, who played my daughter in a lousy movie, but we became pals. And she was getting an award, she was up for something, and Kevin was at the indie things, which has since grown up.
Oh, the ITV Fest? Or?
Well, I don't know which was which, to tell you the truth. This one was in Vegas, and it was a little bit cheesy, but Kevin was hosting the thing. He brilliantly, actually.
Sure.
And so that was the first time I'd seen him in years, But, he's done quite well for himself.
He sure has. He's got his own podcast. Audio-only listeners, boy, are you missing out.
Really? No, we're just smiling.
Yeah.
You're
No, he's done great. His new show, Angel from Hell, just premiered on CBS this past week. To what I'm
is he
told,
in that?
Yeah, him and Jane Lynch.
I know that my
Bob
friend Don
Warner
Scardino's the EP on that thing.
Yeah. That's
who was, of course, Patty Duke's boyfriend back in the '60s.
Oh, hello.
And the original Godspell, or second version of Godspell, Donnie was when he was still an actor.
Yeah, good thing he got out of that.
Yeah, he's done all right as director.
He's done okay as a director,
okay.
yeah.
I didn't realize that Kevin was on it. Is it doing well?
Oh, it did very well.
Oh,
It
good.
got some of the best numbers for a new show in its time period in a long time,
Great.
and they're all very excited. And I've seen it, and I give it the thumbs up.
Okay.
You will enjoy the show.
Oh,
It is
she's
funny.
brilliant, I think.
She's great. Everybody's great on that one. The casting is top notch. I can't wait till they have the both of us on.
That'll be year 6.
Oh, you're
we'll
probably not wrong.
I remember doing the penultimate episode of NYPD Blue.
Oh, yeah.
In which I take over the precinct.
That's
and I'm
right.
this total, ne'er-do-well, I just want to work on my golf swing police captain.
Yeah.
And I'm so infuriating to Dennis that he says, fuck it, I'll take over.
Right.
And all I got were emails from friends in Chicago and New York going, Schmuck, you're supposed to get on in the first episode, not the last. I'm like, oh, well.
Yep.
I mean, it was so far down the line, it was directed by Jesse Bochco, Steve's son, who I worked with again, actually, on Murder in the First, which was a remake of another Bochco series, remember?
I vaguely, but yes. I made the same mistake. I was on the series finale of Warehouse 13 playing Saul Rubinek's son.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
he's here now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've had him on the show.
Oh, you had Saul on the show before me?
That was a scheduling problem.
Fine.
And I wasn't
too.
playing favorites.
Right. Oh no, for the short Jew, it's only right,
But yeah, I was on in the series finale as his son, and all I'm doing is going, this is a whole giant story we could have come back to 15 times.
Really?
I'm so glad the show is literally ending after this one.
Oh well.
Great.
Well.
Yeah.
Well, they're hoping you may be the springboard for the next version.
I want the spin-off on TV next week.
Right. Ralph Malph meets, whoever.
Yeah. Well, I say we'd be very big in Jewish retirement homes.
Well, Saul, as I told you, this is actually directing this play that Danny Castellaneta wrote. Because Saul is indefatigable. Never stops. And he's amazing. Yeah. And also one of the best directors I've ever worked with. We did a movie together over 20 years ago, like 93, 94, called Getting Even with Dad.
Oh, I remember it.
Do you?
Of course, I was the age.
Yes.
I saw it in theaters.
Right. Were you a big Macaulay Culkin fan?
Oh, the biggest, and I remain.
Really?
Sure. I know, Mac.
I think that was like the last year they said we'll give you $7 million. After that, it was like scale plus 10, take it or leave it.
Well, I mean, it's a cruel business. If your movies don't perform, then it's.
Well, he had done The Good Son, and what's his face, Elijah Wood, just apparently, this is a terrible thing to say, but just blew him off the screen, and they were like, oh, this kid's really an actor.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we'd done this movie and with Teddy dancing and Glenn Headley, who grew up on the same street as me in Manhattan.
Wow.
On St. Luke's Place, oddly enough. Anyway, and Saul and I became friends, and he came to me and said, when was the last time you did theater? And I said, I prefer not to think about it. But it actually had been 86. I came out here and I did John Shanley's Savage in Limbo, which John's an old friend, and I had done it originally at the O'Neill. Anyway, and we were royally screwed. No, I mean, we were supposed to get a little bit of money. We didn't get anything. We were changing in the the men's room, that kind of stuff. And it won all kinds of awards, and So he says, well, come on, we do this play called Tom and Jerry by this young writer named Rick Cleveland. So he said, I got you and Bruce McVitie, who's a New York actor I knew. And we need somebody to play all the victims because there are 9 little vignettes in the play and you're killing, it's the same actor, but you keep killing him. And I said, well, let's get Danny Castellaneta because, he's got all the hair pieces. He can bring all the changes, which he gladly did, and he was terrific in it, And that was the summer of OJ.
Yeah.
And
oh, wow.
We were in rep, so we would only play maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And in the middle of the run, and there were other one acts and so forth, I booked this commercial out of left field to go to New Zealand. I was like, really? And they're going to give you $8,000 under the table. I said, I'm there.
Yeah.
So I told the producer, and she got miffed. Regardless, I went and came back, and we all watched OJ on the slow Bronco chase. And then at the end of the run, they paid us $5 per performance, except for me, I got $80 rather than 90. They docked me $5 for going to New Zealand, and I was like, I'd put this on my refrigerator, except I could use the $80.
You're right.
So anyway, and then that play got optioned by Showtime, which had fronted the thing, and I'm saying, okay, so when they go with Joe Mantegna, do I get some sort of remuneration? No. And it's actually a terrific film. It's called Jerry and Tom.
Jerry and Tom.
Because Warner's or whomever wouldn't release Tom and Jerry. And Sam Rockwell is brilliant in it.
Yeah. When Saul was on, we talked at length about it. And still, people, if you haven't seen Jerry and Tom, do yourself a favor and check it out.
And it's brilliantly done in terms of the way they essentially imitate screen magic.
Oh, they do. And it's wonderfully. I'd say it is all practical.
And
keeping that in mind, knowing the digital stuff going on today makes it all the more impressive.
Well, and then Saul and Steve Weber worked together too, another one of your guests. They did the thing that he wrote about his father.
Oh, yeah.
So with Alan Alda playing Steve Weber's father, which is an interesting kind of misfire, but Saul's terrific. But still
great and out there and available. All right, so this takes us to the question that someone wrote. This isn't really so much of a question. But it leads us to us talking about a movie that I love and every person working in this room loves. Someone says, wow, F&G reunion, was Sam in Christmas Vacation? Now, this is a question from someone who clearly does not understand how the internet works, but that's fine. From DD at Jilly Fitness. Anyway, Jilly, that could have been answered easily, but
the IMDb is your friend.
The answer is yes. And now let's talk about that.
Do you know, I did that. That was also interesting. That was also cast by Risa Bremer, who has been sort of not mentioned before, but she also did Masters of Sex and was the producer on this, on the one act. But so I go down there and I do this thing, and Chevy comes on the set, and he is a complete asshole.
Oh, yeah. Well documented.
And he's like, I know about you. And I realized I had, for me, an insight. And I went, oh, he's scared. He said, because he's working with an actor, pardon the expression, and he's nervous about it. So we're just kind of bullshitting. And at one point I said, I know your brother. He has a brother named Ned who looks exactly like him. I think they're, less than 2 years apart. And when I was at Dalton, they gave Ned a job in order to avoid getting drafted for 2 years, and we would basically stay 3 pages behind him, in the history class and so forth. And he was also the tennis coach, and good-looking jock like Chevy was, and so forth. And then we became like instant pals forever, and so forth. And then years later, I run into him with Saul Well, I'm with Saul, and we run into him and Beverly D'Angelo, and they're shooting the Christmas Vacation in Vegas, and he's hammered, and he goes, I tried to get you on this because I said we need a pal for me, and I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Sure.
I never saw the movie until about 2 years ago. We all convened in New York at my older daughter's apartment in Queens, and she had rented it. And I saw the thing, and it's funny.
That is the go-to Christmas movie.
It's a check for $11, rain or come shine, every Christmas for me.
Absolutely.
And I worked in the house when I did Foster's. It's over, not Prospect, it's, in Burbank. The Warner's Ranch
The
there.
Warner's,
and the house next door to it was, I think, where they shot was what's the family's name?
The Griswold house.
The Griswold household. And the house I was in had been used for Bye Bye Birdie.
Oh, wow,
Yes,
that's some fun history.
Yes, and I had just worked with Tom Wilkinson, done a movie with him, and as I was leaving, I realized, oh, this is the fountain. Now, Tom Wilkinson is a huge Friends freak. You know this.
No, Tom Wilkinson, the British brilliant actor, is a huge Friends fan.
When I met him doing this movie called Jenny's Wedding, they said, Tom is very anxious to meet you. I was like, well, and equally so, am I, happy to meet him. And he's like, what exactly was Jennifer Aniston like? I mean, I think this fellow she's with now is very nice,
This is blowing my mind right now.
But I passed the fountain where they were all frolicking in the opening title, so I take a picture and I send it to him. And he goes, what is it? I go, you asshole, that's the fountain. Goes, oh my God, yes.
Oh, wow. I mean, I had heard, when in the first few seasons, Friends was big in the States, but bigger than the Beatles in the UK.
Overseas? I did not know that.
And so that's why I think in season 4 or 5, they did a few episodes in London. And I remember seeing behind-the-scenes stuff of it, and they walking around. They needed Elvis-level security getting around.
Well, it got like that at Warner's, too.
Yeah.
I remember the last episode I did, which I think was the last season.
I believe you're right.
And it was one of those long ones. And by this time, my girls were in high school, so they had pictures from Jennifer and the cast before and so forth. And they're like, I don't know, they're still watching Nick at Night or whatever, TV Land. But by now, they knew. And, and Brad was there that night and so forth. But we went long. And I'm talking to Jennifer, and she said, where are the kids? I said, well, they're, in the house. And it was like Fort Knox. It was just beefy guys with, bulges and so forth in their really attractive blazers standing around me. And she said, well, bring them down. And they both had a friend each. I've been able to wrangle 4 tickets for them.
Wow.
And so they come down through the phalanx of security, and I take them to the dressing room, or the makeup.
Yeah.
And Jennifer's there and usher them in, and Jennifer goes, hey guys, what's going on? And they were like, it's just, the great Gookie, the Stonehenge, nothing. It's an oil painting.
Yeah, you turn into the Scream.
Right? Like, very funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it was a lovely show, although the truth was, and I will confess it now, at the time I was suffering from pancreatitis, which you saw me during that era.
Oh, I saw you right when
I was real skinny.
Oh, it was, yeah.
And I'd go on the set, and I hadn't seen anybody for a while, although the second job I had on Tracey Ullman Show was an episode with Matt Perry, who was 17. That was his first job. Anyway, and I go on the set, and they go, hey, man, wow, you look great, huh? I took off some weight, like, looked like Death taking a shit, like, yeah, well, and that's when you found out the valuable lesson about never Googling yourself, because then you find out that you have terminal cancer and so forth, and the post is 6 months old, and you want to write him back, say, no, I'm okay.
I'm alive, still, I swear, here's today's New York Times. Nothing.
No, right. Just escaped from Bolivia.
That's right.
Yeah. But, so that was fun. So what was the question?
I don't even remember.
Christmas Vacation.
We were talking about Christmas Vacation and the Friends fountain.
I don't know.
It wasn't even a question.
It wasn't a happy set. No, was it like Chevy would yell at the director, and then the director would yell at the first, and it would just kind of go down the line like that. Oh, well.
Oh, well.
You never know.
Well, you were great in it, and it is a great movie, and I can't believe you've only seen it the
kind
once.
of a blink and a miss,
and
quite
recently.
honestly, but
whatever.
Whatever.
So, in talking about your TV appearances, we've sort of skirted around this, the A League of Their Own series.
Loved it. I had done another series.
Yeah.
And I was the lead in a thing called Likely Suspects, which was a half hour, one camera, and it was shot in 16.
Ooh.
And it looked great. We had a guy named Levy Isaacs who later worked as the DP on Malcolm in the Middle, and he knew how to light this thing. And it was a very funny premise. It was a half hour. That was the problem with in a way, was the length. Because there was this the camera, who was my buddy, was very Lady in the Lake. He was an actual character. So we don't even know if it's a he or she or whatever color he is or whatever, but he's the rookie.
Yeah.
And I'm always talking to camera. I'm always talking to camera, but I'm talking to him like and sometimes he drove the car and so forth, and I'm spelling out the case. It was kind of a funny little premise, right? And I'd bump into him or whatever, sorry, and we did, and Peter Chernin was the boss at Fox and TV at that time. And then sadly, and this happens, as you know, we lost our rabbi. He moved over to features, and then Sandy Gruschow came in, and it wasn't his baby.
Right.
I've never understood that, by the way. It's like, well, it's not my show. No, it's the network show, actually, but never mind.
That's not how they see it.
And Sandy put me on something else later, so, So we did our 13, and they wanted to expand to an hour, and anyway, it didn't happen. So then I landed on League of Their Own. And this is, the fiction that all actors need to disabuse themselves of, which is that you think you've landed, you think you've reached a plateau, and from here on in, if it's not smooth sailing, you'll be getting offers. No.
Of course.
And basically all it is a stay of execution. Yeah. And then you go in to meet the 22-year-old casting assistant. She goes, so like, what have you done?
Yeah.
Anyway. So then I did that with Penny Marshall, and Gary was on it, and that was good, and I love Gary, and then Tom directed one.
Yeah.
And Tom, I didn't know this, but this might be an interesting factoid. When he did Big, he replaced Robert De Niro. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Penny told me this, and for whatever, it wasn't a conflict, it was a more scheduling thing rather than any sort of personality conflict. And so Tom came in, and Penny said every time she'd give him a direction, Tom would go, "Oh, is that what Bobby would do?" So I'm playing the Tom Hanks role in League of Their Own. Every time he gave me a direction, I said, "Oh, is that what you would do?" But he was wonderful.
Oh, wow.
And it deserved a better fate. It was a very expensive show. And I think also it was the same people from the movie as Babalu and Lowell and so forth, and Penny and Gary and. I think, imagine, and so forth, and I think that they thought that they had the kind of luxury of time, so they could loop scenes, they could ADR. I mean, if you don't get it on the night, you're not going to get it.
No.
You can fudge a little bit,
not
you can do a little post,
TV.
but it really wasn't.
No.
But I had fun, and and then my career came to a screeching halt.
Yeah, sure.
That's why I'm
Says
in the
the man who's
position I'm
not
in today.
stopped working in 42 years.
True. I had kids in college.
I tried to find the League of Their Own episodes online.
Almost as hard to find as Tracey Ullman, which is on YouTube.
Yeah.
But it's amazing to me that it has never syndicated or anything like that. League of Their Own, I don't know. I have them.
Sure. Well, you and I should get together and put those on YouTube. And
Absolutely.
Fuck it.
And we should. That and Likely Suspects, which was a really interesting show. We actually we were up for 2 Edgars, which was interesting, even after just over half a season. Yeah. We didn't win, but we were up for them. And League of Their Own, we only did 7, I think.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And I love Penny. She'd come on this shed, but we knew we were in trouble. We had the monkey show, like we had the chimpanzee like within the first 6 episodes. I go, that's the kiss of death,
Well, hey, Friends had a monkey on the whole first season.
Did they?
Yeah, Ross had a pet monkey named Marcel.
Right. Well, I did a pilot with Jay Kogan and comic. Oh God, he's very energetic.
Dane Cook.
Cook, right. Okay. And there was a monkey in the pilot, and I said, we got no shot.
Yeah.
No.
That's 2 monkeys in the pilot.
Oh!
I love Dane. Please.
Does he know that?
But does he know that I love him?
He was very good on Louis.
Dane Cook is so much of a better actor than anyone gives him credit for.
Yes, that's true.
Because he's so polarizing as a comedian.
Yes.
And either you love him as a comic or you stay away from him. And he's done some really great acting work in a couple of movies. He was in one called Mr. Brooks with Kevin Costner. Yeah. And a lot of people are like, I don't know. I don't think they've seen that movie because he's pretty damn good in it.
I believe it.
So I
thought he was terrific on Louis as himself.
Sure. But that was a great little
But that is an interesting premise, isn't the whole idea? I mean, like this. I mean, this is not really me. I mean, it's kind of me.
Yeah, this
is
mostly
a semblance of me.
Yeah, this is a heightened version of what you'd be like at lunch with me.
Well, I was telling you about, the thing with Leno, and they kept asking me for more interesting anecdotes in my life, and I didn't have any, so I was going to borrow one from Phil Rosenthal because I'd heard it and it was really funny and it was, tight,
Do you remember the anecdote?
I do not.
Oh,
All I remember
damn
is
it.
about, I have to call Phil.
We've had Phil on the show.
Have you had Phil on?
Yeah.
Have you
well,
watched his show?
Of course.
That's great.
It's a terrific show. If you like
Great.
food and you like kvetchy Jewish people.
I actually saw the LA episode at his house.
Ah.
I went with my friend Rick Murata, who made his sinecure, his fuck you money, by doing the music for Everybody Loves Raymond. And of course, he got to know Phil through our late friend Alan Kirschenbaum, through me. Because we all would play golf together. Because Rick was the drummer on the old Tracey Ullman Show.
Oh, how
And
about that?
and a shout out to Rick. I'm sure he's not listening. He's
give
watching
him
the
time.
football game and throwing things. But
It will post eventually, in the archives.
Absolutely.
People can see it.
but we went out to play golf one day, and I invited this young writer who I knew because I recurred on, while I was doing Tracey Ullman, I recurred on Dear John. Mm-hmm. I played the guy who stole Judd Hirsch's wife, Carlene Watkins, who happened to be married to Ed Weinberg.
Son of a bitch.
I played golf with Judd the other day. Judd is 81 years old, and he's ridiculous.
Oh my God.
He hits the ball long.
Yeah.
He looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
His hair is a little less.
Yeah.
And it's a little grayer, but
Yeah.
he's remarkable.
Yeah.
I mean, truly, But so then Alan was the kid writer on Dear John, and we'd become friends. I walk into the room and Alan would go, "I love this man." So we'd go out and play, and he and Rick became pals. And then Rick did the music for Down the Shore, and then of course Phil and Alan were very close. This was a friend of mine who's gone now, named Alan Kirschenbaum, who was a wonderful writer, who was the son of Freddie Roman, your pal.
Yeah, everybody's pal, the great friar Freddie Roman.
Right. I love that line. Freddie said, "My family came to see my act, and then they changed the name to Kirschenbaum."
That's right. Yep.
Anyway, and then because of that, then Rick knew Phil, and Phil was, Rick was just hanging around during Coach, which Alan was the showrunner on, and Phil had graduated from acting to writing, because he was still acting when he first moved out here.
Yeah.
And a good actor, too.
Yeah.
But
He had a small role in Spanglish, the James Brooks movie.
Does he?
Yeah.
Well, what a misfire that is.
And
Yet, I know what you're going to say.
what am I going to say?
There are a couple of scenes in there you go, there's the scene where the girl is translating between Adam Sandler and her mother, and that's James Brooks at his absolute best.
I will always defend Spanglish. I rather liked it as a whole. I am very
I love the
much
scene
in
where
favor
Adam
of it.
Sandler was cutting a sandwich, so you know what a great, brilliant chef he is.
Well, look, it was a very
it's liverwurst.
tasty-looking sandwich.
It did look good, sure. But
It made me hungry.
Okay.
Every time I see it makes me hungry. I have two more questions, and then I'm going to let you get the hell out of here.
All right.
The first question is...
I got to check my Fit watch here.
Yeah.
My daughter Hannah gave me, and my heartbeat is 92. Is that good?
Yeah, do you remember that weird show with John McEnroe as the host? It was a game show where they would ask you crazy trivia questions.
Yes.
And you'd have a heart monitor on you, and if you ever got out of
meant
your
you were
comfortable
lying?
range... No. And if you got out of your comfortable range while answering these questions for more than like 30 seconds, you were off the show.
Really?
It was one of the strangest experiments in television history. I love that it happened, and I hate that it happened.
Why do you hate that it happened?
Because it should have never happened.
I see.
That to me is just a couple of absolutely coked out of their mind show, creators, executive guys going, "No, I've got it. We'll get John McEnroe to hassle people and see if they can stay calm when he barks questions
You
at
cannot
them."
be serious, right? No. I actually met him at a Ranger game in between periods. I fooled them, and they gave me the celebrity treatment. And they take me to the little place, and you get to meet Michael Dolan, who's a little shorter than you.
Oh, great.
But with plastic teeth.
Okay.
But then I'm standing next to McEnroe, and I say, "I got to tell you, Jimmy Carroll is the best white ball player I ever played against in high school." Now, Jimmy Carroll was with Patti Smith. All my friends are dead.
Oh, yeah.
Basketball Diaries. But he was a thug. He mugged people and so forth. But he was also kind of brilliant.
Yeah.
And I played against him in high school, and he was great. And McEnroe, I thought, was older than he is. So I'm actually like 6 or 7 years older than him. Said, "Could he dunk?" And I was like, "No, you don't understand. When I was in high school, because Kareem was at UCLA, you weren't allowed to dunk." Oh. But that's all I got. I'm out. Sorry,
no,
man.
that's plenty, that's plenty.
I debated telling that story, and I thought,
liked it.
Why not? You can cut it later on the edit.
There's no cutting here.
Oh, sure.
I want to find out about your pal George Clooney.
What about him?
The two of you, it's my understanding, at some point were pitching a pilot with the lead, none other than batshit crazy pants herself, Victoria Jackson.
Yes, indeed. Jeffrey Kramer, who I knew in New York days, who'd been an actor of sorts. He was in Jaws, I think, And it was always at Fox. It was kind of a, an uncle to me and
Yeah.
so forth. And he said, I got this pilot, but we're not gonna submit the material. We're going to read it.
Yeah.
So come along, and we're going to give you like a big screen TV just for helping us out. So I was okay. That's when I met George, and then we would play together occasionally down at the Y and play hoops and stuff. But so we go to wherever it was. We went to CBS last. I remember that because we were thinking we were just dragging our ass by then.
Yeah.
Like you're going to have to wait for Jeff because he's making the deal with Jay Leno. We're just sitting at the table like. So we read at ABC, thanks, but no. Then we read at NBC, so, becomes decreasing expectations.
Yeah.
And we're all fairly miserable by the time it finished. And
What
it never
was
went
this-
forward.
What was this pilot?
I don't recall.
Oh.
I mean, I got to remember that? It's like my friend Chris Rich said, somebody said, did you watch yourself on Reba? He went, I just do them. I don't have to watch them, do I?
I just love the idea that in some alternate universe, George Clooney is not an
Right.
Academy Award-winning
No.
actor, producer, director, and Victoria Jackson is not
the star.
out of her mind with some ridiculous.
She's married to some cop in Florida or something like that.
She's married to some cop. She does the ukulele. She thinks Obama's a Muslim and he's a socialist terrorist, and she's just out of her mind.
I can't
crazy.
remember. There were like 6 of us, and all I remember is George, and he had this bit with a cigarette he was doing. I remember the first time we were doing the read, I actually jumped the bit, and I felt terrible about it. But in those days, you could, still smoke inside and things like that. He was great about it. He always kept his, his sense of humor about him.
Yeah.
I don't know if he does any longer. But.
Well, we hope so. Well, when you see him again next time, tell him we'd love to have him on the show. And last,
yes,
and this is before you get out of here. This is.
I got nowhere to go,
just
by the way.
between-
In case you think I've got pressing engagements, yes, I did. I do have to pick up my cleaning.
Aha.
What?
Well, they're open on Sunday.
See? Busted.
Yep.
All right.
I just want to know on a personal level.
Sure.
What's it like being in Chud?
Chud was directed by a really nice man named Doug Cheek. And he had been an editor. He's still around. And it's interesting to see, although I believe the only copy you can get of Chud, maybe it's on DVD now, but back in the day, it was like a Mexican-made VHS tape, and it was at the slow speed, so it was only about half an inch of tape on the thing. But you could see every actor who was working in New York in those days.
Absolutely.
Every actor, John Goodman, John Hurd, Jay Thomas, Danny Stern, my friend Chris Curry, Hortis Hurd, John Bedford Lloyd, and it's sort of like, that era. And one day, about 10, 12 years ago, a guy named Todd Anderson, a young actor, does a lot of commercials, comes up to me and says, I just got to tell you, I was listening to the Chud with, the documentary version. I went, what are you talking about? He said, there's a director's cut. It was him and Chris Curry and maybe Hurd too on it or something like that. And I said, there's no such thing. He said, oh, yeah, there is. Because they made a sequel, too.
They sure did.
So, but what was it like? It was like, it was like just hanging out with your friends. Although I remember John was doing some things, and I was, a theater guy in New York. I really did television, but it wasn't ancillary, but it wasn't my first thing, or film for that matter. Although my first film appearance was a non-appearance in the movie The Front. Oh. But I still get, credit for it.
That's nice.
But I remember watching John working the edge of frame, as they said, where his look was just off. And it was very compelling, because John really, John Hurd, can I say this? John Hurd was a bona fide poet. He was kind of going to be our guy, I always felt. Like if you see him in, the Joan Micklin Silver movie, well, Head Over Heels with Peter Riegert. But before that, the one about the Boston newspaper, the name of which escapes me.
Oh, yeah.
And you look at him and you go, or the one he did with Jeff Bridges, Cutter and Bone.
Oh.
And you look at him and you go, this guy is a comet.
Oh, yeah. No, he's great,
he's great.
and
Still great.
He's remains great, and people from my generation would know him as the dad from Home Alone.
That's right. Isn't that funny?
Or the poor son of a bitch who dies in the Pelican Brief.
Okay, missed it, but okay.
That's all right. You catch it on cable.
It's like Richard Gere.
That's Denzel, Julia Roberts.
Right. I have a picture actually. I've shown you that. I did a Soldiers play in 1981 and 82 for like 6 months and change.
Yeah.
And the cast included Denzel Washington, Samuel L. Jackson.
You tweeted that pic.
Did I tweet?
No,
it's
in an article about you that I saw.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's a great photo.
It's a remark. David Allen Greer, the late, great Adolphe Caesar, Mr. Sidney Poitier, who had come to the show that night, who I later worked with in a movie called Fast Forward. He's the loveliest man on the planet. My friend Steve Jones, who actually got me into the show, and Peter Friedman, who's a wonderful actor. And it's just a great group, the late Charlie Brown. And,
So here's my question.
Yes, my friend.
When are you going to sit down and write the book?
You know, you are not the first person to say this, and we'll talk about this off camera about maybe this podcast idea. But yeah, because I am second generation blacklist. You know, my first words were Fifth Amendment. I'm a pink diaper baby.
Yeah.
My friend Joe Guilford, who is the brother from another mother, had a play on last year called Finks, which was actually up for the Drama Critics Award for Best New Play, which was about peripherally about the McCarthy era. So it's actually about his parents, and Zero Mostel characters in there, and a Jerome Robbins person as well, who was a friendly witness during that very unfriendly time.
Indeed.
So yes, I should.
Okay, you really should.
Yes, I should.
These stories must continue on.
Yes, well, I need to do it. You know, it's the idea of just telling your story forward, because I'm getting to an age where we're actually losing people now.
I know.
You know, and I don't just mean my parents' age. I mean my peers and so forth. And it's
You're still a little young for that.
no,
yeah.
but I mean, the world takes some.
Sure.
It happens.
Yeah.
But you're right.
No, you and I will continue this conversation off camera, because yeah. Anyway, I can't thank you enough. I'm not going to let you go that easy.
Okay.
I don't know how much of the Steven Weber episode you watched, but all of our episodes end the same way, with a little thing we call the Larry King game.
Oh, okay. I didn't
catch
see that? No, I did not.
Okay, so here's how that works. The beloved ghost that is Larry King, we do a thing here where before he throws to the phones, maybe he's interviewing someone, maybe he's just shooting the shit down the barrel, and a call comes in.
Larry King's still alive.
Oh, he very much is.
I saw him at Brooklyn Waterbury.
Oh yeah, no, I just call him the ghost of Larry King because
see.
he's so old.
He's so old.
But
you ever read that book, Tough Jews?
No.
It's really interesting, and he's in it.
Okay.
He was the friend of the guy's father who wrote the book. It's all about the Murder Incorporated maniacs.
Right after I read a separate piece, I'm going to get to that one.
Okay.
So we've got this thing where before he throws to the phones, Larry has a little aside with the audience.
Oh, I see.
Where he gives up a little piece of information that maybe we didn't need to know, maybe we did need to know it. It can be the littlest thing, it can be a whole monologue, and then he throws to the phones, and if the city he throws to happens to have a funny sounding name, all the better. I will give you an example, which is, we're having a very interesting chat here. Real quick, my penis has a knuckle. Hohokus, New Jersey, go. So it could be anything like that, but what we do need from you for sure is a bad Larry King impression, not a good one.
Okay.
So they're already there.
Too good?
So
maybe not.
So maybe too good. No. So bad Larry King impression, a little TMI moment, and then he throws to a funny sounding city, and when you are ready, that is your camera.
Okay, and I'm doing all this to camera?
You're doing all of this to camera. Okay. You're Larry, this is your show.
Okay.
You take a minute if you need it.
All right.
But whenever you're ready.
Okay. Speaking to all the people in East St. Louis, and all I can say is that arch still standing there, or is that the other place? That's the one across the river. That's right. Are there any Jews in East St. Louis? And if they are, have they come out of hiding, or they still have that Friday night thing where they go with the searchlights? That's what I'm wondering. That doesn't sound like Larry King. It sounds more like Alan King, for crying out loud. I could do like Sidney Greenstreet, perhaps.
Throw to the phones.
We go to the phones. We got a caller from Hohokus, New Jersey. Is that the one you said?
That's what I said.
Oh, that's what you said. Okay. From Sheboygan.
All right, Sheboygan. Thank you.
That's
sir.
it? Oh, we're done.
That's once you throw to the phones, that's the end of it.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea. I thought there was more to come.
No, you did it. There's no way to fail the Larry King game.
Really?
That's the good news. There is no way to fail it.
It is more like Alan King.
That was more like the Alan King game. Which maybe we should start doing.
No, I had the joke, it was the one, about Todd Sussman told me this. And one of those jokes you forget for years, and then a friend of yours reminds you. Tell that joke, and Old guy walks into the public restroom, goes up to the urinal, takes out his shit, and craps in his pants. Looks up. I gambled, I lost. Anyway, it works for me. Are we done?
Boy. That's it, my friend.
Oh my
I've
God,
kept you
I
prisoner
am
now
wrong out.
for over 90 minutes, if you can believe.
Did we
that's
go
how long
over
it's been.
90? Well, I'll check my Fitbit
Yeah,
watch.
check your Fitbit.
Oh, shit. I think I owe the money to parking lot. Oh, well, you know,
man.
the price of fame.
I'm so sorry, but truly from the bottom of my heart.
Oh,
Sam,
this
thank
is
you so much.
this is a blast. I hope I didn't, bore the ass off of you.
Not even a little bit.
Sure. I bored myself a little bit.
This is what we
but,
live for. No, please. Now just sit there for a moment while I wrap things up for the audio listeners and the viewers at home. Thank you so much. This has been episode 256. Wow, 256 episodes. We are fast approaching our 7th anniversary coming up in March of this year. Will we do something special? Probably not. But maybe you'll celebrate at home on our behalf. So I want to thank everyone here at Team Chat Show, Evil Dr. Kenny Chen, Mike Duman, and Jason McIntyre up in the Crow's Nest. We had Samantha Ward on makeup today. Who else did we have today? Nobody. We had a real skeleton crew today. So I guess we're only thanking people who are in the room, right? That's the rule? All right.
You can thank Kevin.
Well, we're getting there.
Okay.
All right. Special thanks to Natalie Rosen. We missed you today. Please come back to us soon. And of course, biggest of all thanks to Jamie Foxx and the man himself, Kevin Pollak. He's at Kevin Pollak on the Twitters, for allowing me to sit in for him today and have a little fun with my old pal Sam. Kevin will be back next week, so fear not. This little train wreck is over for the time being. But once again, Sam, thank you so much for coming. And I don't have a proper mug, but I'm Samm Levine, and until next time, fuck off.